everyone out there in guitar land, Mike Hedding here, coming to you today with just a little free bluegrass lesson. We're going to work on kind of a bluesy lick in the key of D. We'll start by breaking down the basic version of the lick, but what I want to focus on for this lesson is starting to think about creating little variations. So bluegrass is all about the subtlety. So sometimes you might do a hammer-on instead of a slide. Sometimes you might change the timing very slightly. And that's what I want you to start thinking about for this lesson is how do you create those subtle variations on licks you know. It's a great way to remember the lick because you created your own little variation on it. It's also a great way to develop your own sense of style. You'll start crafting the licks in a way that's suitable to your ear, and that's how some of the greatest players have developed their own style, is creating subtle variations on licks they already knew. So that's what we're going to focus on for this lesson. So let's jump into this bluegrass lick in the key of D and we'll start breaking it down. Here we go. Okay, so the most basic version of the lick sounds like this. So it's kind of a bluesy lick in the key of D. And I think of this position personally, I think of it as kind of like a Tony Rice inspired lick. I think of a song like Blue Railroad Train, if you've ever heard Tony's break on that. He plays out of this. It's kind of like a D7 position. Very Tony Rice. So that's what we're going to do for this lesson. So we're going to start with our pinky of our left hand up on the 5th fret of the G string, which is a C note, so that's like our D7, that flatted 7th note. Normally you might grab that up on the 1st fret here, but why I think Tony and other players grab it up at the 5th fret, because we're going to go from 5 to 2 to the A note. So I'm doing pinky and index finger, good stretching practice there too. So why I think he did it that way instead of like this, if you do it this way, the notes ring out more, which is good maybe in like a cross picking setting. But in a lead, you actually want that first note to get cut off. So that's why playing them on the same string is valuable. You hear that note cut off, which helps it pop out, where if you do it like that, it kind of rings out. So that's what we're going to do here. So we're playing 5-2, and then we're going to move our pinky down to the 4th string 5th fret and play that note. And then back to the 2nd fret. So your pinky is kind of moving back and forth. You can keep your index finger anchored down. If you had really big hands, you could try using your 3rd finger, but for me, I'm going to use my pinky. And then we're going to play 3 open on the 4th string, and then a 3-4 slide, and then open D. And then I'm just going to go into like a 2-finger D and just strum, and I'm going to kind of avoid the highest string. Normally you might add your 2nd finger, your middle finger, right on the 2nd fret of the high string to make like a full D. That's kind of like a happier D, which doesn't work quite as well for a bluesy song. So what I like to do is leave my middle finger off and then just omit that higher string with my right hand, and you kind of get this D that works good for, you can use it over minor sounds or major. You just do this D. Here that's kind of like minor, or you could do more of like a major sound. So we're just doing like a 2-finger D, and I'm going to use my index and ring finger. You could also use your middle finger, it doesn't really matter. Whatever feels comfortable. So that's the lick. Probably the other little trickiest part is making sure you don't rush through that 3-4 slide. So it's a little faster. And you can just do some strumming. Just do a little strumming in between. Alright, so that's the basic lick. So where would we use that? So you could use it as just like a fill. As like a backup lick or in between a vocal line. You could also use it to like lead to a G. could also use it like from an A. So if you were going from like an A to back to a D, you could use it as like an ending phrase. Or you could extend it, play it with like a D run. So that'd be like a 2-measure lick. So that'd be like another backup fill lick you could use. So just get used to this position. Okay, so for variation 1, what I would do is just take these ideas. So we're kind of playing, it's like a D mixolydian scale. You don't have to remember that. Notice how we're sliding from the minor third to the major third. That's very bluegrassy, very Tony Rice. We're using that flat 7 to give a little tension. And we're using the third, the minor third, and then the slide. Hear that? So we're playing with that major minor idea. That's what we're doing there. Okay, so a variation on that is like kind of how Tony did it in Blue Railroad Train, so you can do something like this. Very similar lick. We're starting it the same way. First 4 notes are the same. This time we slide early, and then open D, 3rd fret 5th string, upstroke, and then back to the open D. So that's our flatted 7, same note as up here, just an octave lower. So that'd be a loop. That'd be one way you can think about it. Another way you can do it is with a double slide. So notice how we're not creating a crazy variation. We're not going out into a totally new scale position. We're just working that same shape and kind of seeing how much ground we can cover just hanging out in this area, and that's really good. I think sometimes it's easy to just want to change the left-hand notes a whole bunch. Sometimes it's almost harder to create a subtle variation. So that's what we're doing for this lesson. Okay, so that's 3 licks, just basically just changing it very slightly. Let's look at another version. Let's add one more note. So let's add that high D, that 3rd fret on the 2nd string, and we can use our middle finger for that note. So we're gonna just come into it, and then open this time. Instead of the 5, you can also play the 5th fret on the 4th string, like that, or like this. And then 3/4 slide, and then back down. So you have. Remember playing with that major minor 3rd. That's very common in bluegrass. And blues, right? So blues and bluegrass have a lot of similarities. If you want another version, you could do the double slide. So you can kind of even combine these to create your own versions too once you get it down. So that's kind of taking some of variation 1 and putting it together. Remember, the timing is the same for all of it. You're just trying to figure out what notes you can add how much time you have to fill. That's why just looping it with that little bit of strumming in between is so valuable. Or they all fit the same timing. Okay, let's do another one, variation 4. So this one's a little more advanced, but I think you can get it with some practice. So starts similar, 5/2, and then we go 3 open on the 4th string, and then a little quick hammer on open 3, and then hit the upstroke on the D string. So you have, and then that slide. So you have. hammer on is faster. It's 3 E and then 4 and. Get some good pressure, get some good tone out of your guitar there. These licks kind of are about attitude as well, so put some attitude into it. Another way I'll create variations is changing the right hand rhythm. So another common mistake I made when I first started playing is whenever I try and create variations, I would always go to my left hand. I would think, okay, I've got to change the pitches. And if you change the pitches too much, obviously it's not going to sound like the lick. So one other thing you can do is change your right hand rhythm. So change the picking, and that's going to create a variation without having to change the left hand too much. So we're going to go 5-2. Like that. So we're making it more syncopated this time. So we're going 5-2, and then a pause on beat 2, and then a slide, a quick 1-2 slide. So that's like sliding through the blue note, and then open with an upstroke. So we're going 1 and 4 and. So we're playing on the upbeats, which adds syncopation. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So I'm going down, up, 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 down, up, 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 down. That's going to help me play the timing. So changing the rhythm's very powerful. Final one. Kind of just taking those notes and mixing them up in a different order. So this time we're going to slide from 1 to 2 on the 3rd string, sliding through that blue note. And then up to the 5th frets, that's the flatted 7, so very bluesy, right? So you have very bluesy intro. So I'm doing down, down with my pick. So that slide happens very quickly. It's not like a timing. It's just a quick grace note. And then back down the notes. So we have our 3rd fret on the 2nd string, 5th fret, 2nd fret, and then 3rd fret on the 4th string. So those notes of the scale are root, flatted 7, 5, flatted 3, open, root. Kind of like a bluesy D arpeggio. So we have. So what I want you to practice is, 1, creating your own version of these, and don't worry. What I need you to do at first, and what I always tell myself is, don't be the player and the critic at first. If you're the player and the critic, you're never going to come up with anything because you're going to be too critical. So right at first, when you're starting to create these licks, the licks that you come up with might not be that great, and that's okay. I know the first ones I came up with, these ones might not even be great, but the process is important. So coming up with the lick itself is important. It doesn't matter if it's quote-unquote good or not. We just need you to start coming up with something. And if you're too critical at first, or you're waiting for this perfect lick to hit you, you're going to be waiting a while. So what I want you to do is take these variations and see if you can even come up with your own version. Maybe you slide up, and then you do the double slide ending. So that'd be like taking the last variation and then the part of the variation 2, right? That'd be an idea. Maybe you go. Or. So it's so important to just start coming up with stuff, because the first lick, it's going to be the hardest, and it gets easier, Pretty soon you're going to have 10 or 20 variations on every lick you know, and that's so important, because if you're just trying to memorize all these licks, it's going to be really hard. what I think of there is memorizing this position, memorizing this position and these shapes, and then I just trust my right hand, my left hand, and my musical ability, hopefully, to create a lick in the moment. So that's what I want you to practice. Play along with the vamping tracks. The vamping tracks will just be a section of D, and you can practice playing these licks, hear how the notes sound against the practice tracks. That's very important as well. All right, hopefully that gives you some stuff to practice. Good luck, and keep picking.